Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the study. Now, in this lecture, we'll study the ancient teaching on commerce. Now, according to Oxford Dictionary, from an economic point of view, commerce is defined as the activity of buying and selling. But in traditional Chinese culture, the economic division is created based on labor and the type of work. And commercial activity is included in the category of merchant. You may remember, merchant is in fact one of the four people. Okay, one of the four people, which are officials, also known as students, farmers, artisans, and merchants. Economists will call it exchange, but we will preserve the word commerce to reflect the word used in traditional Chinese culture. Okay. Now, although merchants are listed as the last one in the four people, but in no way that it reduces its importance to the governance of the state. So in the past, there has been a misperception of some sort that merchants do not make a real contribution to the economy, and they're just opportunistic people because first of all they don't produce anything and simply profit through price differences, and secondly they do so by storing up useful commodities and wait for the price to go up, which is deemed to be an immoral thing to do. So that was the misperception before. And indeed, there were occasions in Chinese history when the government oppressed the merchants. For example, Emperor Gaozu of Han Dynasty imposed a heavy tax on merchants and also denied the descendants of merchants the opportunity to work as government officials. Also, during the early Han Dynasty, merchants were also forbidden to wear expensive clothes or ride in carriages. But this kind of policy was not part of the core traditional culture, and surely they're not in accordance with the principle of Confucius. In the Gongyang commentary of the Spring and Autumn Annal, merchant is listed as the second category of the four labor types. So this suggests that how the four people are arranged in the list doesn't indicate a descending order of importance. It's just a list, and all the four people are equally important. There is, however, an order of the process of production. The Chinese called agriculture the primary sector, and the commerce as the end sector. So this shows that agriculture is the foundation of the rest of the economy. Well, it makes sense because farmers produce the raw materials, with which the artisans manufacture goods and articles, and merchants exchange the raw materials and manufacture goods. So the sequence is more about the nature of production, not a moral distinction. It's the natural order of production, and there is absolutely no contempt for industry and commerce. As recorded in the General Research on Literature and Authority, Ye Shi, the philosopher of the Song Dynasty, as we probably remember from previous lectures, indicated that it is because the four groups of people all together contribute their usefulness to society that civilization can be advanced. To depress the second occupation, which is industry and commerce, and to promote the primary one, which is agriculture, is not a correct theory. However, it is a fact that agriculture and commerce are, really different in their importance. If we look at the development of a country's economy, we may realize that the relative importance between primary and secondary industry varies through time. This is well described in Sima Qian's record of Grand Historian, the book of Open Market Operation. Sima Qian explains that in a dynamic state and a complex civilization, commerce is naturally more important than agriculture. So this is due to the fact that in a more complex civilization, there is a higher demand for more sophisticated products and more efficient logistic and transportation system. So all of this requires the development of infrastructure and industrial activities. Now, of course, modern industry classification is much more complex than the classification of the four people, but the idea is fairly similar. Given a stable population, the portion of industry and commerce is bound to increase with the complexity of the economy. The record of Grand Historian documents that during the periods under the regime of Emperor Yao and Shun, and also the good periods of Shang and Zhou dynasty, there was time of calm and repose. People during this period honored the school as the chief social institution, and they prefer the primary industry, which is agriculture, rather than the secondary ones. Also, what is more important is that people during these periods of peace and repose used the rights and justice to control their personal interest and personal desire. So, under this self-control, people focus more on the necessity of life rather than increasing material demand. Now, we don't want to get into too much detail over the relationship between people's mental states and the overall economic conditions, but it is clear that the relative importance between the primary and secondary industries depends on the social status, and it changes through time. And at any particular point in time, we may say that one industry is more important than the other. But as to the four occupations as a whole, according to traditional Chinese culture, they are all deemed to be essential to the development of the state and people's life.